Here's part 2 of the Compendium's Tracing the Theoretical Templar Treasure Throughout France series. The article is also available on the Compendium's blog. In this series, we are looking at various remarkable locations throughout France that have become closely linked with legends surrounding the elusive treasure of the Knights Templar. In the first part of this series, we explored the theory that the Knights Templar successfully fled with their treasure in the wake of the royal edict that led to their mass arrest. We also delved into one of the most prominent sites tied to these legends, the Forest of Orient. In part 2, we'll journey through other locations across France that have become entwined with the enduring mystery of the Templar treasure. Guisers. Guisers is located in Normandy, in northern France. It is a popular tourist attraction for its impressive medieval castle, which was actually built by the English for protection against the French. This was a time where many parts of France were in English hands. Known for being a Templar hotspot, the castle has been associated with buried treasure and attracts many Templar enthusiasts. In the mid-12th century, the castle became a pawn in the English-French power struggle when it was included in the dowry of King Louis VII's daughter, destined to marry the son of England's King Henry II. To ensure a smooth transaction between the treaty and the wedding, the Templar took possession of the castle from 1158 to 1160. Historically speaking, a brief period of Templar presence seems insufficient to explain the modern fascination with Guisers. However, this short occupation is far from the town's only link to the order. Following the mass arrests of 1307, Guisers served as a preferred detention site for imprisoned Templar, where many awaited interrogation, often being tortured, before facing trial. Several sources, including Alain de Murger's La Persécution des Templiers, reveal the names of knights imprisoned at Guisers, among them none other than Jacques de Molay, the order's last Grand Master, who was held there before being transferred to Paris for his final trial. This detail is also recorded in the 1313 Chroniques Métriques by Godefroy de Paris. The Grand Master, who was in prison in Guisers at the time, was summoned. He was then released and taken to Paris. It was with Gérard de Sade's 1962 book, Les Templiers sont parmi nous, which was mentioned in part 1 of this series, that the historical town of Guisers stepped into the limelight as a possible location for where the legendary Templar treasure might have been hidden away. De Sade relates the extraordinary account of Roger Lemoy, a warden at the castle from 1926 and through the Nazi occupation of Guisers. For a long time, Lemoy had had suspicions that something was hidden in the large mound under the castle. In 1945, he started to dig a pit, using only what he had available. The warden dug to a depth of 21 meters. What he discovered was related in Gérard de Sade's book. I'll never forget what I saw at that moment, because it was a fantastic sight. I'm in a Romanesque chapel made of Louveciennes stone, 30 meters long, 9 meters wide, and about 4.5 meters high at the keystone. Immediately to my left, near the hole I passed through, is an altar, also made of stone, and its tabernacle to my right, the rest of the building. Halfway up the walls, supported by stone corbels, are life-size statues of Christ and the 12 apostles. Along the walls, on the floor, stone sarcophagi 2 meters long and 60 centimeters wide, there are 19 of them. And in the nave, what my light illuminates is incredible. 30 precious metal chests, arranged in columns of 10. And the word chest is not enough. We should be talking about lying wardrobes, each measuring 2 meters 20 long, 1 meter 80 high and 1 meter 60 wide. Following this discovery, Lemoy informed the mayor and the town council about his findings. The town dignitaries, intrigued by his account, followed Lemoy to the entrance of the pit. They could not believe their eyes. One town councillor, overwhelmed by the unusual nature of the findings, declared that the pit and its supposed contents were undoubtedly the work of a madman. Lemoy's idea was ridiculed, and the town officials refused to take any part in the project. Lemoy later managed to find a local man willing to descend the pit, Emile Bain, an experienced firefighter from Guisers. Once he reached the bottom of the shaft, he started to crawl through a horizontal tunnel, but lacking in oxygen, he refused to go any further. Although he was unable to provide definitive evidence regarding the existence of the chapel, he did, however, affirm the significance of the work that Lemoy had been pursuing. Despite this acknowledgement, The local town officials were resolute in their determination to halt the entire project by backfilling the excavation site. Following this abrupt intervention, Lomoy was dismissed from his position, marking a significant setback for the project he had been passionately involved in. In 1962, the French Minister of Culture, André Malraux, got involved in the case. He organized the first sanctioned dig and brought in various specialists. Officially, this had nothing to do with any treasure and was just a routine dig, but it happened to involve digging a shaft in the exact same location as Lomoy had previously done. Alain Lemaire relates in his book Guide de la France Templière, Templar Guide of France, that while the dig was underway, a certain Serene Highness Jacques, Marquis de Giselle de Vaux, Duke of the Val d'Agueda, came to assert his rights over the Templar treasure at Gisors, as fourth Grand Master of the Sovereign Military Order of the Temple of Jerusalem and Mount Carmel. However, His Serene Highness left empty-handed, as on the 12th of October 1964, in the presence of Lomoy and the press, the search was closed. There was no proof of any underground chapel, although Lomoy insisted they were only a few feet away from the discovery. The case was talked about in various papers, and a few months after being questioned about it by a senator, André Malraux, Minister of Culture, agreed that they should dig further. This time, it was the Minister of Armies who was charged with managing the task. He brought in the 12th Engineering Regiment, who started work in February 1964. They also concluded that the rumored underground chapel filled with treasure did not exist. Yet rather than putting the matter to rest, their involvement only intensified the speculation. Had the French government secretly removed something? Were they part of a cover-up to conceal the discovery and the chapel? This excavation would be the last. Authorities halted further digs by pouring concrete into the shaft, citing urgent risks to the structural integrity of the castle. The idea of underground tunnels in Gisors is not a recent thing. There are numerous reports about underground escape routes in very early accounts about the castle. Thus, it is plausible to imagine that Lomoy did indeed reach an underground cavity, but we'll never know if it was filled with treasure. We do know, however, that in 1970, a worker digging a ditch in a street close to the castle uncovered a very interesting find. A large bronze vessel full of 13th century coins was discovered. 11359 coins to be precise. These were mostly silver deniers of French and English origin. The archaeologists who studied the find concluded that the coins were hidden in the mid-13th century, which implies that they could have been hidden at a time when the Templar Order was active in the surrounding area. Although this is a fantastic find, it seems pale in comparison to the amazing underground vault, full of giant chests that Lomoy supposedly discovered. He passed away in 1976, taking his secrets to the grave. The treasure of Argoat. Argoat defines a small part of the region of Brittany in northwestern France. The term Argoat derives from the Breton language and could be interpreted as the part of land along the forest. Brittany is famously known as a land steeped in legends and folklore, many of which revolve around enigmatic themes such as ghosts, druids, and mythical creatures. The Templar Knights also have a wealth of legends and stories that are deeply rooted in this part of France. Although numerous locations within Argoat have been linked to the Templar Knights, it is important to note that we often lack substantial evidence to confirm that they held these locations as their own. An example being the temple in Lanlef. Its mysterious origins have been attributed to the Templar, but no evidence of this exists. Nevertheless, as is the case throughout the rest of France, the strongholds and properties that were once controlled by the Templar Knights were mostly transferred to the Hospitallers following their arrest and the subsequent dissolution of the order. In the early 1980s, a fascinating and somewhat mysterious portion of a supposed ancient map was published in a local newspaper. The map was in the possession of a small group of researchers who had stumbled upon it while rummaging through historical documents. Although the article provided details about the map, it did not reveal how the newspaper had initially come across it. The map represents the northern part of Brittany, with the 7 islands in the bottom right corner, yet intriguingly, Brittany is displayed upside down. The annotations on the map seem to be a strange mix of medieval French and Latin, and in the center there is a depiction of a large eagle. It appears that there are 2 distinct itineraries marked on the map, leading both from the northern coastline to the center of Brittany, with various stops at notable places that do indeed exist. Some of these locations have a historical connection to the Knights Templar. Supposedly, the itineraries were intended to provide precise directions for the Templar Knights following their daring getaway with the treasure. If this was indeed the case, it would strongly suggest that they escaped from a northern coastal port, instead of the more popular theory that posits La Rochelle as their departure point. Following their initial getaway, they would have sailed to the region of Brittany to stash their treasure in a secure location. The journalists behind the article claimed that the research group was far from pleased with their decision to publish the map. Convinced that the map pointed to the lost Templar treasure, the group was actively investigating and wished to avoid attracting outside attention. Despite their reluctance, the map was published on the front page of Le Trégor on March 20, 1982. To prevent a potential gold rush, the most revealing section of the map was deliberately left out. Still, the article speculated on possible hiding places for the treasure, mentioning a stone cross near a fountain, but in a region like Brittany dotted with many similar landmarks, this clue was of limited help. The article mentions that the research group had surveyed the land around the possible cache. They had apparently created a detailed grid, and they had taken aerial photographs of the site, all in view of starting the digging process. Unfortunately, despite these promising initial steps, there is no further information available about the subsequent dig, or whether any valuable items or evidence were ultimately recovered from the site. The map has never been published since, and the research group has chosen to remain anonymous, leaving many questions unanswered. Just like the famous Xena map of Oak Island, there has been much debate surrounding the authenticity of the map. The language on the map appears to be somewhat peculiar and raises suspicions regarding its origin and historical accuracy. Journalists who have had the opportunity to examine the map claim that they have only ever seen a low-quality photocopy, which adds another layer of intrigue to the mystery. Furthermore, a location marked on the map bore a name that was significantly different during medieval times. Does this suggest that the map is a modern forgery? Or could it be a genuine document made many years after the initial getaway? Until the map reappears again, we'll probably never know. In the next and final part of this series, we'll look at 2 other places in France that have been associated with Templar treasure. Until then, good day from Charlotte of the Compendium. For this article on the Compendium blog, please follow https://www.theoacislandcompendium.com/post/tracing-the-theoretical-templar-treasure-throughout-France-part-2